So good morning, everyone. I just had the signal from our colleague that we are going live, so I hope that's the case already. He said it might take a couple of seconds, but I think that should be working now. So very happy to welcome you all this morning. I think we're about 150 people here gathering today around what is a very crucial question for Europeans, how we live together. Is also the very first kickoff session of Housing Europe's annual conference, which will be running over 2 days. And we will also be hosting a social housing international film festival. So I hope you will also be able to catch up on some of those short films, which delve a little deeper into the history and the present of social housing around Europe. So the specific initiative we're going to be looking at a little bit more closely today is, of course, the new European Bauhaus and how we can really work together with this initiative on building communities. So that's really the topic of our 2-day session. The new European Bauhaus, when it was announced by Ursula von der Leyen in their State of the Union address, the President of the European Commission, it was really a welcome surprise, I have to say, for our movement bringing together cooperative, social, public housing providers across Europe. Because it really raised the mission of our sector. So the mission of our sector really shares the goals of the Bauhaus on having sustainable places, inclusive places, and beautiful places for people to live. So it really raised the mission of our sector to the really highest levels of EU strategy. And it's coming also, of course, at a very crucial moment for Europeans when housing and how we live is really top of the agenda and top, of course, more importantly, of people's concerns. We've, of course, Housing Europe has been gathering best practices which really bring together those 3 objectives on the ground through our Housing 2030 initiative, through our Housing Evolutions Hub, also, of course, our Responsible Housing Awards, which we run together with the International Union of Tenants, and Our Homes Our Deal. So we've been working on bringing together those best practices, but I think this initiative is going to put an extra spotlight on those. So, as I say, together with the Green Deal, so the flagship initiative of the EU, the pillar of social rights, this new European Bauhaus is yet another flagship initiative which really goes to the heart of our mission. But of course, what your work, so the organizations we're going to have on this panel today who are providing housing at a local level, the challenge is to turn those high-level initiatives into a force which will lead to a multiplication of those best practice and really make a difference in people's lives. So that's what we're going to have talk about today in this short hour session. And I'm really looking forward to it. I would remind you, the discussion is also going on Twitter with the hashtag Social Housing Film Fest. So it's really just the start of the collaboration together. And of course, really happy that Orla Murphy could join us today, representing in a way the new European Bauhaus, coming from the high level roundtable. So so that we directly kick off the discussions and the feedback from the ground, from the local level, into your work on the high level roundtable. So thanks a lot, Orla. I hand you over the microphone, the screen.
Thank you so much, Serka. It's really lovely to be here as part of this conference, representing the high-level roundtable of the new European Bauhaus, which I'll just say 1 or 2 things about in a minute, but also as an architect who really I cut my teeth in practice working in social housing in Ireland, and as an educator, we focus on educating the architects of tomorrow in relation to how they should design housing and how we think about how we live together and how we build communities. So these are the huge design and social challenges that face our global society, and then in the light of decarbonisation, how do we do this? I suppose the new European Bauhaus, which is an initiative, Serka, as you said, launched by the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen last September in her State of the Union address, it is an initiative that's trying to harness the objectives of the EU Green Deal to decarbonise Europe by 2050. And that has lots of strands, but really connecting them with how we live and our daily lives is the aim of the new European Bauhaus. And it has 3 core values of beauty, sustainability and inclusion, all of which I think directly apply to housing and how we live together in the best way that we can. So my role on the high-level roundtable is really to, with my 17 other colleagues, is to inform the process and to offer inspiration from our various perspectives, but also to act as a bridge between the communities that we're speaking to. So I'm very interested to hear from our panelists today. As you know, the New European Bauhaus has 3 phases. At the moment, it's coming towards the conclusion of the first phase, which is the co-design phase that runs up until the end of June. So it's a very important part of the process, which is trying to gather all of the input from all of the communities and citizens within Europe and beyond to shape the process. And then the next stage will be, the delivery stage will consist of 5 major pilot projects, and that call will be launched in September. But we've already seen through the New European Bauhaus Prize the interest in this initiative. There are over 2,000 entries into the New European Bauhaus Prize, and I know that Housing Europe is one of the partners who are going to be on the jury for the prize. So it's great to see that connection happening. And there are hundreds of conversations going on around the New European Bauhaus. So it's really taking shape. And then the idea is that there's learning from that delivery phase and that it scales up and scales out. So I do think it can be a very important part of the how the EU Green Deal comes into our daily lives. Often climate change, I think, is something that can be perceived as being, too big a challenge or too high a challenge to connect with people on the ground. But housing, I think, and building communities is really where that connection impacts on all of us. So I'm going to, without further ado, I'm going to get into the conversation because I'm really looking forward to hearing what from the panelists today. I'm just going to begin by introducing our panelists, and then I'm going to share the discussion around a couple of key questions. And I believe questions can also be added into the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. So firstly, we have Rosanna Zaccaria. Rosanna is president of Lega Abitanti in Italy. So founded in 1961, Lega Abitanti is a nationwide Italian syndicate association representing social housing cooperatives, their consortia and individual housing cooperative members. Lega Coop members are present in close to, I think, 300,000 locations, which is really phenomenal. Alessandro Almadori, president of Ater Umbre, also from Italy. Fedecasa is an Italian association that brings together 74 local authorities and public housing companies at the provincial, communal and regional level that work toward a common goal to provide social housing dwellings to low and middle income households. We're going to also be joined by Christian Lieberknecht, president of GDW in Germany. And GDW is the Federal Association of German Housing and Real Estate Companies. And it's the umbrella organization of the relevant sectors in Germany with its headquarters in Berlin. GDW members provide fair and affordable homes for over 13 million people. Knut Tolle, executive member of the board of IWO, Housing Initiative for Eastern Europe. And IWO is an association of private and public partners who aim at a market-oriented and ecological development of the housing and construction economy in Eastern Europe. And Karine Puyol from France, from the European Affairs l'Union Sociale pour l'Habitat. The Social Union for Housing, USH, is the national representative body of the social housing sector towards the public authorities, the media, and other relevant stakeholders and the wider public. And it brings together 631 social housing organizations in France. So you can see our panelists represent an enormous number of people in Europe. So you're all very welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to just kick off by asking, I suppose, given the 3 core values of the new European Bauhaus, which are beauty, sustainability, and inclusion, how does your sector support those aims? Can you see, just a little bit, sort of explicitly or directly, ways in which the housing sector in the countries that you're from maybe demonstrate how those values work in action? who'd like to take up the first question? Rosanna or Karine? Rosanna, we'll go first and then over to Karine.
Very shortly then. So first of all, very happy to be here and very happy that Housing Europe has organized an occasion to speak about New European Bauhaus. As Sorha said, it's crucial and it brings housing, as she said, at a strategic level. So to try to answer to your question, as a national committee, Italian National Committee of Social Housing, we are trying to work on a New European Bauhaus on two aspects. First of all, something which might not be original for other countries in Europe. It is the first time in Italy that we have created a system with public, private and cooperative actors of housing. This is original for us, and we absolutely need to work on it in a systemic level. And then the second aspect I want to underline is that we think that New European Bauhaus, as it was in the origins of Bauhaus, when Bauhaus was the occasion, historically speaking, to work on standardization and rationalization of home culture and home housing building. So we want to work, maybe if you put the presentation on, I will just say two things. I ask the help of Diana and Abderrahim. But in any case, we want to link, so the second one maybe, thanks. Two aspects, I said. First of all, how to respond, to give an answer to a need, which is always important for social housing operators, but at the same time, to engage people on a debate on the concept of homes. As you said, we as social housing operators, we represent thousands of people in Europe. So we think that it is crucial to test some ideas with people on how they want to live in the future. So we are testing two ideas, the idea of fluid living system and the idea of integrated living system. I will just try to make an example about the idea of fluidity. We have some initial data saying, for example, if we speak about two targets of inhabitants, elderly people, we know that more than 25% of elderly people would be interested in moving in different contexts in smaller towns, from metropolitan areas to smaller urban areas on one side. On the other side, to make an example, we all know that the flexibility of working conditions of young people, of the young generation, needs a support so that they can be able to move easily. So we are working, one of our activities that we will present is that we are working on a national platform of affordable housing offer for young people so that they can move. So this is about an example about the concept of fluid, about the second concept of integrated living system. We are testing, if you help me with the third slide, sorry. We are testing this second idea with a sort of survey that will investigate needs and hopes and also creative imagination of people. For example, about which kind of services people want around their living system, which kind of homes, concept of homes they expect. So we are, this survey will be, as I said, in the spirit of Bauhaus, will be a creative survey, which is intended to push imagination. So needs and hopes again. Thanks.
Thank you, Rosanna. Can I ask how many people are you capturing in that survey?
Considering that we represent, as I said, public, cooperative, and private operators, we are pushing that next week, and I guess at least 5,000 people should be involved in that.
It's fantastic, because I think including the hopes and dreams of the people who live in and who want to shape how they live in their homes, I think is a really important role that can shape how housing is going to change. And it's clear from what you're saying that move towards rural areas, for example, and move towards remote working is going to change and have an impact on what housing needs to do, how it needs to support our lives in the future. Karine, I noticed you also had your hand up for that first question, so I'm going to just go to you there, please. And just your microphone, I think, is off.
It's okay? Sorry. So good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning, and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak about the new Bauhaus. Indeed, we completely share the values of this European project. USH, so Union Sociale pour l'Habitat, which is the French Federation of Social Housing for France, decided to be our partners. I think this is the president of the commission who said that new Bauhaus could be seen like a lighthouse in the storm, and indeed this is an important challenge, and it's important to have this type of challenge in the context of the crisis and the pandemic. So new Bauhaus, it's an opportunity. Concerning I would say the fact that beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive are in the heart of the new Bauhaus, I would say for each project, it's a balance to find for a social housing provider, and this balance is not easy to find in the context of the crisis, in the context of the limited budget, and in the context of the increase of the cost. Deep and beautiful renovation is a big challenge. Deep renovation means give a second life to social housing building, often with bad reputation. In the imagination of people, social housing is not really seen as a beautiful building. So there is a need to find for each project, for each building, the potential of beauty and well-being. So that's important. And often it's a dilemma for social housing organization, because deep renovation is really very expensive, and it could be less expensive to demolish and to build another one, even if it's not compatible and it's against zero carbon and circularity principle, and also social principle. So for that, new Bauhaus could be an opportunity to work on this question. It's an opportunity to give values to this action of big renovation, and maybe adapt financial tools to these values and to these added values on territories for low carbon, circularity, for people. So for that, we see new Bauhaus as an opportunity. And also think beautiful is not so easy for our sector. What does it mean, beautiful, exactly? And we have a lot of discussion on that with a group of with working group at national level, and with social housing organization. Think beautiful is an aggregation of different aspects. Beautiful is the quality of material, is the comfort, internal comfort for people, energetic comfort, also question of acoustic, air quality, so all the question of sensitivity. Light also, it's an important issue for our tenants, but to have a well-being, access to nature, green areas, and in our big agglomeration, how do we do to get back the nature to the city? Beautiful is also a place to share with other people, so the social life, it's important. It's also a question of access to service. And also, we speak a lot about industrialization process for the massification of the renovation, the massification of the construction. But it's important when we speak about industrialization to how to make it beautiful and inclusive. So New Bauhaus for us is really an opportunity to speak about all these questions. And of course, yes, we completely share the value of this project.
Thank you, Karine. I think that's such a helpful extension of the understanding of beauty, in particular, because of the three values of the New European Bauhaus, it's probably the one that is, in a way, kind of contentious, because how do we define beauty? But I think you've broadened the understanding of beauty out to refer to intergenerational design, to beauty in society, to beauty in appreciating really good access to natural daylight, access to nature within housing, and those very human qualities of comfort as well as enhancing beauty. So I think they're really important points. And we were speaking before we went live about the impact of Lacadin and Vassal, French architects who recently won the Pritzker Prize, in particular in acknowledgement of their work in renovation of social housing, keeping buildings, not necessarily demolishing them, which is hugely challenging and often very difficult to justify on a cost basis. But if you consider embodied carbon, and also the embodied communities that you're holding in the place, the value is a bigger value. So I think France is really leading the way in that regard, and it's great to be able to put a spotlight on that and to include it in our conversation. Christian, I might go to you now. Thank you for joining us from Germany. And I just to float that first question, because I think it is useful to tease out the kind of the positive qualities of housing and the values of the new European Bauhaus, which are beauty, inclusion, and sustainability. And just to get a perspective from the German housing community about how those values might be strengthened within the housing community in Germany, or how do you think social housing reflects those values, or could maybe do so more in terms of the future of social housing in Germany?
Yeah, thanks, Ola. First, I have to apologize for being late. I could not see the crucial button on my small display. So it worked out on Friday and it worked out on Wednesday, but not today. So enough for that. I did not understand all what you said, but I just start to talk a little bit about the German situation. I think what Karine said is very important to redefine or to define the term beautiful, because beautiful is very due to what people think about beautiness, and this could be very, very different. And so in context with housing, it's what Karine already said. It's to have a comfortable feeling about where I live, about my apartment, but also about the environment, and also about what I have to pay for that. And this is, I think, the precondition also for inclusiveness. You cannot include people if you have very, very high rents. And this is the very crucial point, the economic point, because in Germany, and I think in most European countries, you see that prices rise. The price, especially of the ground, of what you need to put the building on, or what the building is already standing on. And this is the problem, also speculation combined with land use. And this puts the prices up very, very high. And to prevent people from having to live very far outside the metropolitan area and to drive in every day and to work. And so this is not what beautiful means and what inclusive means. And so the challenge for us, I think, for all of us, is to deliver decent housing for affordable prices in a very good and comfortable environment, which is secure, buildings who have good energetic condition to prevent energy poverty, and also to offer the people a living environment which they can use even at high ages. They get old and older. They should not be forced to leave their apartment and to live there. And so our housing companies try to cooperate with welfare organizations to support the tenants at high ages, and so they can stay there for a longer time. And I could not hear everything which Karine said, but I think this is very similar to the German situation. And at the end, it's also a lack of money, as always. Lack of money and support by the state, especially when you want to reach the energetic goals, 25, 35, 45, or whatsoever. And this cannot be done only by tenants and landlords. This has to be subsidized. Otherwise, you will never reach the goals which have been set, which are very important and very necessary, but you cannot reach these goals without state subsidies. And in this case, I think we expect some tailwind from the new European Bauhaus initiative to put some pressure on the European Commission, and also put some pressure on the national level, on the member states. And well, I don't want to talk too much. I was too late, and so I don't want to take too much time from the other. Thanks.
Thank you, Christian. And I suppose you've highlighted some of the challenges, obviously the economic challenges, because I suppose with a growing population, on one hand, the challenge is to provide housing for that population. But on the other hand, we're trying to decarbonize the continent, and balancing those two enormous challenges in a way that it tries to take account of social and spatial justice to provide the best quality of housing at an affordable level, and it also ensures that people can stay in their homes and that they're not under threat of having to lose them. They're significant challenges to try to balance. Alessandro, I might go to you. Maybe if you might just maybe speak a little bit about, again, building on what Rosanna spoke about, fluidity initially, the conditions initially, and what you see maybe as what are the future challenges? Are there in terms of population growth or demand, or changing population or changing needs for housing initially, and what maybe do you see?
So thanks. Good morning to everybody. Just a few words after the speech of Rosanna. the situation in Italy and in Europe, I think, in the post-pandemic period, as we all realized, it will be very difficult. The National Statistic of Italy, the National Statistics Office in Italy, Istat, tell us that more than 2 million of households are in poverty now. It was about 1 million before the pandemic. Another research by Nomisma, an Italian Institute of Research, tell us that 700,000 of these households could emerge from the economic difficulties with a rent of 200 euros. The pandemic has made these challenges that our organizations would already have been facing more difficult. Maybe the consequence of this fragility can be disruptive if not properly managed. At the same time, the opportunity offered by the recovery plan and the new European Bauhaus for us at the same times can lay for us the basis for the overall review of the Italian public housing system. For us, the new European Bauhaus is an opportunity for us committee. Starting from here, we can imagine a path with the new European Bauhaus and with the commit that will lead us to explore the possibility of collaboration with between the committee's actors in order to provide a response that is consistent with the objects of the plan, an approach that places real need and recovery at the center. Thanks.
Thank you, Alessandro. I think it's so helpful to have the perspectives from several countries, because it's clear that while many challenges are cross-cutting across every country, and similar challenge, the pandemic, for example, has affected everyone in Europe, everyone in the world, and it's going to have a lasting impact. And then that there are also regional variations as well. And so understanding at both the close-up level, at the local, regional, national, is also important in understanding how the high level, the global European policy can be supportive of people on the ground who are delivering change. Canossa, I might go to you now for the perspective that you have from, because Circa tells me your understanding is your position is slightly different to the other panelists who are representative of their national housing associations. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience representing Eastern Europe and how you see, I suppose, a connection with the new European Bauhaus, how you might see those three values represented where you are, and also maybe something if you want to speak about how the new European Bauhaus might support housing from your perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Orla. May I ask to share my slides, please? Thank you for inviting me to this event and giving me the opportunity to say some words on the situation in Central and Eastern Europe. And we have there still a specific situation after the independence in the early 90s. The housing sector is in urgent need of reforms still in many countries. And I would like to say 3 words about the specific part in this region. A large part of the people in Eastern Europe live in apartments and multi-story buildings, and this multi-story buildings need urgently modernization. We have still very low refurbishment rates there, and the renovation wave is really a necessary initiative to modernize this housing stock. And due to the privatization in the beginning of the 90s, the people own their apartments, and they often are still prone to a tenant mentality. That means they are not belonging to their common properties, and they need to go through difficult decision processes to change something in their buildings, and often they are dissatisfied with the housing management. And they have problems to select professional housing administrators and managers. And a large part of the population is energy poor or at a constant risk of energy poverty. And that means this mix of the situation requires a special attention. And I hope that the Green Deal, the renovation wave, brings to the countries where we have this atomized structure and where we are missing institutionalized housing at all in most of the countries, new impulse and also new proposals. Maybe the next slide, please. And we, from our organization, we are an NGO founded by German government and private partners in 2001. And since then, we have implemented around 60 projects. We are working only internationally, and our focus is to improve the management of the multifamily buildings and to increase energy efficiency in multifamily buildings. And there we can see that the traditional approach does not work anymore, or cannot work longer. We need some refurbishment innovations there to increase the refurbishment rates, and what we renovate today must last until 2050. It should be climate neutral, and the buildings that have been renovated in Central and Eastern Europe in recent years are not climate neutral, and they will soon be needed in renovation again. And the renovation took place with building materials that cause a lot of emissions and are mostly hazardous waste. That means we here need innovation, and one of the possible approaches is serial refurbishment. That means prefabricated multifamily buildings maybe to refurbish with prefabricated elements to increase the quality and also to close this gap that we are already now missing a lot of labor forces to do this refurbishment work. Other things we are thinking that are important is the diversification of the housing markets to develop new housing offers there. And therefore we are a founding member of the first European housing cooperative LIM, Living in Metropolises, based here in Berlin. And our idea is to bring affordable housing to also to countries in Central and Eastern Europe. We have a project in Latvia, and what we of course would like to do not only to offer affordable rents, but also modern construction, and we intend to build wooden hybrid buildings in the future, and to develop somehow a typical, a little bit like Bauhaus, a typical type of a new building for rental housing. The next slide, please. And just to underline what I said, one before, please. Here we see the example of Latvia, and the red column is showing that we have only a very small part of new buildings since the independence in the early 90s. That means the housing stock is very old. Half of the housing stock is coming from before the Second World War, and we need refurbishment, and we need, in addition to that, also to handle, to think about lifetime cycles of buildings, how long they last, the typical buildings from the Soviet time, and so on. And in addition to this stock, next slide, please, we have a so-called missing middle. That means a large part of the population is not able to get public support for housing, or they cannot afford a mortgage. That means affordable housing, affordable rents are very important, and there are new offers necessary to to fit also fitting to this needs of the population there. Next slide, please. And this recently was developed in Latvia, also in an OECD study for the country. And one of the recommendation was to expand the private rental market and to provide households with more affordable housing options. And this can work, I think, with housing companies, cooperatives at the moment not existing there. And therefore, we, with our idea, with the European Housing Cooperative, we intend to contribute to this situation and bring some innovations to the country, and then hopefully can repeat them also in other places. And last slide, please. And therefore, if we see the challenges there and the future task, so we see that the new European Bauhaus initiative should concentrate on the rehabilitation of this housing stock, so to really contribute to this kind of housing, to multifamily buildings, and with the renovation we can complete the privatization. That means then people can belong also to the common property and feel responsible for their buildings, and can organize the economical life cycle of the buildings as we are used to do this, for instance, in Germany or in other countries. Then the diversification of the housing market is important. That means the introduction of cooperatives, rental housing, and the more professionalization of management of housing, and finally, not only to see the buildings, but also to see all these large real estates areas, also to be more focused on energetic neighborhood and urban area renewal. So that means we are looking to the cities and urban development itself there. That's what we are intending to do, and where we are pleased to see that there is this new initiative, and we hope that we can use this to also to bring our mission to these countries.
Thank you very much, Knut. I think it's it's really interesting to hear that perspective, and I think obviously this is focused on Latvia, but spanning out from it as well.
It is typical,
yeah. And I think you touched on a number of interesting aspects. So building capacity of what are owner occupants in a lot of existing housing that have what you call a tenant mentality, but maybe don't have that the agency or sense that they have the capacity to be able to renovate their buildings or maintain their building a long time, or bring up for example, the thermal capacity of them. And I think that's very challenging. So I very much like the idea that you're, by strengthening that administration, by strengthening and building capacity within people who either own or are tenants of housing, and that might need demonstrator projects, to show how that can be done, to show how, when you share a building in a multi-building occupancy, how you can work together to upgrade the thermal performance of your building, and also improve its the shared spaces, the access to nature, and that my experience of living in a multi-unit development in Ireland demonstrates that takes time, actually. And one of the things that we, in a way, we don't have in terms of decarbonisation is time. So I wonder, I'm just going to put that question to you, that are there ways in which you think there could be some immediate, tangible support that help deliver those long-term challenges? What needs to happen first? Rosanna, if I might maybe go to you first on that question. If you could name one thing that would really help the situation from your perspective, what might that be?
Yes, well, very shortly before saying goodbye to everybody, what I think that is emerging from our discussion this morning, I'm positively struck by that, is that it's emerging a sort of democratic idea of beauty and a democratic idea of aesthetics, which is calling in a way, I think the European Commission towards a new policy on housing. I think that the German, the French, the Italian are all calling the German colleagues. It was very clear about the fact of the risk of speculation and the need for subsidies. So I think we really have to work on these two aspects. So aesthetics, concepts, but also economic support and housing policies. So I think that also my Italian colleague said reported about a lot of fragilities coming after COVID, but I guess in all other countries, from what I feel, from what the other colleagues said. So I think this is these two things needs to be balanced, as we said. Thanks.
Absolutely. And I understand you have to leave. Thank you very much, Rosanna. Alessandro, I might invite you just to pick up on Rosanna, what she mentioned there. Again, think about what would be your priority in terms of what support you think could have most effect in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah. What I want to say before is that New European Bauhaus for us is an opportunity. Is an opportunity for the new commit, which involved private sector, public sector, cooperatives. It's the first time in Italy, and it's important for us to work strongly together for the first time, for a response to the demand, and obviously it's important for us to construct, to have this strongly work together. Only this. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm struck by the potential of collaboration or knowledge sharing, because it's very clear that there is significant innovation going on in the housing sector, particularly across Europe. Picking up on Knut, your perspective with regard to this kind of holistic way of looking at everything from housing management to renovation of existing housing to innovative new techniques for building multi-unit housing. And then, Karine, what you're saying as well about innovation in upgrading existing buildings. And then from the Italian perspective, that sense of fluidity, of being aware of very changing contexts, affordability, of moving population, post-pandemic, the changes that it has on the type of housing we might need to be building. And then, Christian, your perspective on, okay, well, the supports that we need are very clear, actually. And in many cases, they're financial, actually. So is there a value to some drawing together or collaboration or knowledge sharing that can pool the various experiences in different countries? Would that be of use? Karine, I might go to you. Hey, yeah.
It's what can we do together? It's what it's your question. Yesterday we had a meeting with our members about this question. What do they need to go further in this new European Bauhaus? And in fact, it's quite yes. Indeed, we can explore, and your group could be the high group could explore all the, in French is frein to the innovation, the legislative analysis of could be interesting, and how social housing, how the project could go further without an analysis of all the negative point on the legislation. For example, how to improve innovation through public tendering. It's an important question. They also need simple things. They said that they need exchange at the ground level. They need exchange between colleagues. They need exchange with other partners, and they need time to have deep exchange, not only through a conference or through a big discussion. In fact, they need to meet and to exchange about their project, how they do these things or these things, to improve themselves, their practice. And I think new European Bauhaus are three level. The ground level, and we need to improve this ground level to encourage people to work together, and to, this is, I don't know how to do that, but I think this is really important. There is the national level to bring discussion, to see what happened, and the European level is how we have all this exchange together. And I think, yes, it's important to have this three level in mind, but how there is a fluidity between these three levels. And for the moment, I must confess that I don't know how to improve the ground level through the European work. It's not easy, because there is the question of language, there is the question of different practice between members and so on. It's not easy, but it's a challenge, but it's an important challenge. And the positive thing is that the social housing organization in France, I'm sure that the other colleagues is the same, are motivated to work and to exchange together to go through this challenge, for this objective.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you've highlighted the fact that this is complex. It's not easy. It's not easy to work at different scales at the same time. At that ground level scale, where you're working locally, it's person to person, and then at the regional and national scale, there are, that's complex and has so many different facets, from financial to legal to regulatory requirements, and then above that again, there's the kind of continent-wide, the EU Green Deal, and the global challenges. And I was just struck while you were speaking by Naomi Klein's book, This Changes Everything. And when that's the point of what she's saying, is that responding to the climate crisis actually is a fundamental systemic shift. And that can be at the same time kind of possibly frightening, but it also is an opportunity to change how we work, to change the systems that maybe aren't working so well, and to rethink them, and to work together and collaborate at different scales to imagine the world that the shared world that we want to live in, that should be like. Just not, we can't start from scratch, we wouldn't want to, but we can begin to make maybe more fundamental changes, because in a sense we have to. And I suppose I just wanted to ask if you have any kind of last comments that you'd like to make, or anything that you haven't said yet that you'd like to, because I'm just conscious of time. But I think this conversation could go on much, much longer, but maybe it's the beginning of something that will continue over the course of the 2-day conference. But just to see if you have any final comments that you'd like to make before we conclude. Knut, we'll go to you first, or Christian.
Okay, thanks. I think we agree that we have to speed up to reach the goals, and that more money is necessary, but is not enough. And you were asking about what we could do together, or what we can learn from each other. And I think the legislation, at least in Germany, is always behind the innovation, the technology, which is possible to perform. And so, if you look at other countries, what are they doing? What does the legislation allow the housing companies to do? And I think we are very much behind in this, and we have to learn from each other, which is possible, what is possible, and we also have to overcome the lack of capacity, craftsmen, and so on, because we can have money, we can have the best technology, but if you do not have the people put this on the ground and on the street, we haven't gained anything. So this is a process which is not very short term, but which has to be kept in mind and to follow it. Maybe also some educational thing which has to be stressed. Thanks.
Thank you, Christian. Circa, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, really just to thank you, Orla, because I realize we are running out of, we've come to the end of what has been a really useful kickoff for our bilateral exchange. I think it's I think we will be continuing that. So getting the feedback from those stakeholders on the ground into the high level round table. And for me, the message that really came through is that indeed the panelists today described a little bit about how they are on a daily basis working towards those shared goals of having those inclusive spaces. And I think they've given a bit of a reality check. The words dilemma, the word balance came through. So the dilemmas that they have on a daily basis to meet goals, but on a limited budget, and also considering the limited budget of citizens, but also the housing providers. So I think those dilemmas, that balance that they are striving to make on an everyday basis, I think if that message somehow comes through to the high level round table, and that we can work together on a way forward, on a vision for the future of housing, I think we've already got a really good start from today's session. So thank you, Orla, for being there, for making yourself available. And let's continue the conversation. And actually, already today at 11:10, we will be bringing together some of key partners of housing providers, of course, local authorities, cities in this case. And they will be looking from a housing perspective on describing how they are also sharing the goals of the Bauhaus and working for more inclusive, sustainable, beautiful spaces for people to live. So thank you so much, all of you, for making the time and for finding your way to this experimental new platform. It's all a bit of an adventure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
So it's 11:10. So let's start the second panel of this day. A very warm welcome to all of the speakers and of course to the audience. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Pepijn Bakker, and I'm the organizer, along with Housing Europe and a few other organizations, of the first International Social Housing Festival. It was in 2017 and it was in Amsterdam. Right now I'm working for a housing association in Amsterdam. The housing association is called Rochdale. It's named after an English city, but it is in Amsterdam. And we operate 38,000 units in Amsterdam and cities around Amsterdam. And along with our colleague housing associations in Amsterdam, we operate about 40% of the housing stock in the city. And coming hour, I will be moderating this panel. And actually, I'm also a close listener, because also having heard the previous panel, many of the challenges that I heard are very familiar to us. So how to add homes to our city, how to maintain the beauty of the city, how to become more sustainable, how to continue with the existing. This is really, really topical at this moment in my city. So I'm very happy to join. And I hope that along with our speakers of this panel, we can really add to the discussion that we just heard. So yeah, after having focused on the role of housing suppliers, we now shift the focus a little. Because we're going to talk with a few representatives of cities all across Europe. And yeah, it's clear, as Ursula von der Leyen has coined, new European Bauhaus. It's about recovering from COVID pandemic by investing in cities or in solutions that create more sustainable, inclusive, beautiful cities and neighborhoods. So therefore, this panel is shaping all-in neighborhoods for next generations. Now, each of the cities in this session, Barcelona, Villeurbanne, Helsinki, they have been working towards achieving the goals of this new European Bauhaus initiative. And also, they're all related to the Social Housing Festival because they hosted previous editions, or they are preparing for next editions in the coming years. So it's nice to both focus on this new European Bauhaus movement initiative, and also about what we're going to see and what we will find out in the coming housing festival editions. So yeah, I'm looking forward. Let's first introduce the speakers. One of the speakers is not available in this call yet. He might join in a little later. So that's Ben Madsen. He's the president of Housing Europe, and he will provide an overview of the challenges in European cities that we are facing. So I hope he will join us in a minute. Well, after having spoken to Ben, we will move to the case of the city of Barcelona. We are very happy to have the housing councillor Lucia Martin here in this panel. So Mrs. Martin, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Then we move to the Villeurbanne, which is in the greater metropolitan area of Lyon. And before so that's Cedric van Stievendaal, and before him, Mr. van Stievendaal was, of course, the president of Housing Europe. So it's a familiar person to Housing Europe. And it's great to have you back here, Mr. van Stievendaal. I might say Cedric. we met before. And then we move on to Mrs. Sanna Vestikansa, and she's deputy mayor of the city of Helsinki. And she will talk about the impact of COVID on her city and how to get out stronger. So also a very warm welcome, Mrs. Vestikansa. And I hope I pronounce your name correctly, or otherwise you might just correct me.
Thank you. It was very well.
Okay, great. Okay, then yeah, I would like to ask also the audience to engage. So if you have a question, please type a question in the chat. And someone is moderating this, and we also we will also use a few of the questions and ask them to our speakers during this panel. So yeah, let's then start with the panel. Mr. Ben Madsen is not here yet, so I would like to move right away to our second guest, who is then Mrs. Lucia Martin. So great to have you here, housing councillor of the city of Barcelona. So wait, you might turn on your microphone right away. Yeah, great to have you here. Yeah, for you, this COVID pandemic is of course something that you didn't expect. But I know from Barcelona that you were already implementing policies to increase the social housing stock in your city in Barcelona as an alternative to home ownership and to private rent. Yeah, how is it going? Was it influenced by the COVID pandemic? And can you maybe give us a brief update?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, well, can you hear me well? Is it okay? Okay, the sound? Okay. So I would like to thank you, of course, for inviting us to participate at Housing Europe's annual conference. It is an honor and a pleasure to be talking about housing with colleagues from cities all around Europe, since public housing providers, of course, and also non-profit housing providers play a key role in ensuring the right to housing to all. So about the question you were asking, as you probably know, here in Barcelona City Council, we are completely committed to increase our social, affordable, and cooperative housing stock. After decades of housing policies that never aim to guarantee the right to housing, this has been one of our top priorities of our local government since 2015. And it is obvious that, in one hand, COVID has highlighted once more our weaknesses in terms of a lack of adequate and affordable housing. This is a reality. But on the other, this COVID crisis has put housing policies at the center of the public debate and has allowed us to promote some new measures and tools that did not exist here in the country, and also to reinforce some of the policies we already had in place here in Barcelona. For example, in terms of short-term policies, the Spanish authorities suspended all the evictions during the state of alarm. Now we are still having this kind of suspension, and now we are asking for more structural measures to face this evictions problem. Another thing is that Barcelona approved a moratorium on the collection of rent in our public housing stock and also in our publicly owned retail spaces. Public housing rents were also reduced if the tenants suffered a significant income reduction as a result of the crisis. Also, some hostels and a 6,000 square meter pavilion provided temporary accommodation to more than 1,000 homeless persons. And in terms of longer term policies, we can say that the increase in the number of social and affordable housing units we are working on is more important than ever in the city than ever. And at the same time, we are starting to introduce industrialized construction technologies in the public housing stock to speed up construction times and to improve the sustainability of the construction process. That is something that we are doing right now. And also, all the support measures we have put in place since 2015 have proven extremely successful to respond to this crisis. For example, our anti-evictions unit, the increase in rental subsidies, the short-term emergency housing solutions through several programs that we have. But the truth is that we are still facing and working in major challenges. For example, we need rent regulation to respond to the risk of a massive eviction crisis once the temporary moratorium on evictions is lifted. Now we are pressuring the Spanish government to achieve this rent regulation. And of course, urban regeneration and housing refurbishment, it is a big opportunity with the Next Generation funds that we are already working on it to implement them in the city.
Yeah. So this sounds great. So I heard that you got a lot of new measures to improve, let's say, affordability and housing rights in your city. Well, all of them sound really good. I hope that you can keep them if the Corona crisis is over. And I also understand that you still need more, like rent regulations, and you have big challenges in the refurbishment of homes in your city. Yeah. So let's then move to actually the last part, the last part of what you mentioned, which is then refurbishment of your of the urban refurbishment. Let's put it like that. This is really related to also this new Bauhaus initiative, right? So I'm curious, how could this new European Bauhaus initiative help you? What do you need from the initiative?
Well, this new European Bauhaus provides us with an excellent framework to improve what we already been doing here in Barcelona, and of course to scale up our joint efforts. And maybe I can explain it with two brief examples. The first would be our co-housing projects. Here in Barcelona City Council, we are supporting co-housing projects by providing public land in a long-term lease to these groups of cooperatives. This is a bottom-up affordable housing model, and most of these projects have also pioneered the use of wood and a circular approach to building. This is very interesting. And now, since this has been a successful experience, we here in the City Council have signed a framework agreement with housing cooperatives and foundations to scale up the model and to build and renovate 1,000 housing units over the next years. Yeah. And maybe a second example is what I was saying before related to housing refurbishment. We have increased our subsidies and financing schemes for energy upgrades and also for the installation of photovoltaics, but we have also focused our refurbishment programs on socially and economically vulnerable neighborhoods. That's what something that before it wasn't implemented in the city, and now we are doing it. And of course, we think that both these examples, co-housing and housing refurbishment programs, are good examples of how to accomplish the three goals set out by the new European Bauhaus. We are talking about energy efficiency, inclusiveness, high quality designs. And as we always say, I think it's important that we need to remember that not all the cities are the same, of course. When we talk about housing, I think Barcelona is a clear example of the additional challenges that are being faced by Southern European cities. So we have a small public housing stock. We have a prevalence of home ownership over rental. We have a speculative real estate investment and touristification. We have limited gains from energy refurbishment due to our mild weather. So that's why we need the European funds, we need the European policies and also the European frameworks to understand these different contexts, the diversity of needs, and in order to adapt all the responses that we give.
Yeah, that's great. I understand that actually the main focus is to scale up. There are some things that are working quite nicely in your city, like providing public land and also this circular approach and subsidies and financing schemes for more sustainability and to improve vulnerable neighborhoods. So I understand those two. Yeah, that's about scaling up and also a little bit of learning, let's say, implementing a more public approach to housing instead of focusing on home ownership. And interesting. Well, that sounds really good. So I hope this will work out. We are also going to see, I guess, a part of the results because you are hosting the 2023 edition of International Social Housing Festival, which is in 2 years from now. Why is your city then hosting this festival? I think I know the answer already, but I'd like to hear it from you.
I think I'm not going to surprise anyone, but I think it's a great opportunity to showcase the diversity of the great work that has been done by affordable and cooperative housing actors, and also to provide a platform to exchange between the different stakeholders, public, private, local, international. We are already working hard to bring together the local partners to design a festival that fosters a dialogue among the different stakeholders, including also not forgetting civil society, with the common goal to build sustainable and inclusive neighborhoods. And in the film festival, you will have the opportunity to watch a film from one of our Barcelona public supportive housing facilities for the elderly, and as well we're going to show a short documentary on our co-housing program through our digital stand. So we are waiting 2023 with energy.
Yeah, looking forward. I'm also I'm very curious about what we're gonna see when we are in Barcelona, and I also understand that the objectives of this new European Bauhaus, they really go together with what your goal is for the next housing festival. I understand that. Super nice. Yeah, looking forward. So thanks a lot for joining us, and stay with us because maybe there are some questions at the end from the audience.
Of course.
I propose that we then move to Villeurbanne, which is represented by the mayor of Villeurbanne, which is Cédric van Stevendal, with a great Flemish name for a French person. So Cédric, very welcome. Villeurbanne is the French capital of culture for 2021 right now. What is that? The French capital of culture, what does that mean? And is there a relationship with between culture and housing?
Hi, Pepin. Thank you for the invitation. And of course, let me say some word for Solka and Bent. I see Bent come, but just 1 second. I don't know if he succeed in join us in 5 minutes, but I want to say him how I'm happy to join for another time Housing Europe. Of course, I'm always happy to keep a link with Housing Europe and try to hook European thinking and strategies with local action. So I'm very glad to say a few words about European Neighbourhoods, of course, which strongly rings a bell with my own history and political views. Sorka, hi. Before becoming mayor, I've been heading a local housing association. As you say, we're reading about 17,000 dwellings. And from the ground, there is no choice but following a holistic approach, in fact. You need to build refurbish, paying attention to material, energy efficiency, outfit, urban storytelling. You also have to pay attention to inhabitants, past, present, and future, how they cope together, how we all live together, and not only side by side. A city, we can say, is never a stockpile of towns, nor a stockpile of individuals. A city, finally, it's a system of link. I believe in that. As mayor, I'm also a vice president of the metropolitan area of Lyon on culture. And as you just mentioned, Villeurbanne has just been designated French capital of culture. That's the first time in France. So Villeurbanne, for the first time, is the first French capital of culture. So we are very, very happy with that. And what I can say, that culture is so important because it is all matter of link, in fact. What we share, how our differences can feed each other instead of marking a distance. As social housing, we had to use art and culture to support citizens in producing their own narrative of urban transformation. And we have a lot of different projects in this direction. Culture and art are a condition for an inclusive city because they don't only produce a common storytelling, they pay attention to nuances. They contribute to make a shift in politics, inventing a political core of fragility of what is lost of translation. Through the culture, we don't have different languages. We consider translation as our common language. So of course, it's very nice to have this opportunity during all 2022 to present how we can, with the culture, finally create a new story for the town, of course, but for all the inhabitants.
Yeah, great. That's great to hear. It's also interesting to hear your introduction about how you combine renewing of the city also with keeping in mind the perspective of the tenants, which is really, of course, the reason why we do this. And it's also very interesting to hear that culture is really an important factor also to create this collective story. It's super nice. Thanks for your introduction.
And I think it's important because you are very involved in the International Social Housing Festival, but the culture has a big place in this festival. The link between the culture and social housing and inhabitants. And we succeed in that during the first edition, and I think that we succeed in that during the second edition. So for Helsinki and for Barcelona, and I'm so happy to see you, and that finally we have the two next towns for the next International Social Housing Festival. I think that it's important that the culture have a big part in this organization.
Yeah. So, hey, let's move to the new European Bauhaus initiative. I'm curious, so also in your city, I think that some of the aspects of this new initiative will appear to you. So do you recognize that that Europe will get back on track if we combine social and economic recovery, and also with improving sustainability? Is that something, is it familiar also happening in your city? How do you see this?
What we can say on this topic, the ancient Bauhaus had the ambition to put art and science in housing and useful objects to improve quality of life, which was a big aim at the time. I understand that the European New Bauhaus has an effort to target art and science on housing and urban issues to accelerate finally the three big transition of the time: climate mitigation, social justice, and empowerment. And New Bauhaus can consist finally in giving new means to alleviate initiative, to scale up experiences, but it also gives legitimacy to develop a holistic approach, to pay more attention to new shape, new thinking about heating and cooling, about governance, about intimacy and shared space with a new type of family. And there is a lot of creative and energy, and I think that the new European Bauhaus can provide a channel to drive this creativity straight to the target. And I think the ancient Bauhaus had architect and designer at core of its proposal, but the new Bauhaus can be held mainly by housing stakeholders. I think that's one of the key points.
Yeah. So for you, new Bauhaus is really about innovation. It's about new approaches, new creativity to
yes, but
tackle.
With housing stakeholder and with inhabitants, and not only with designer and as architect. Of course, we need them, but I think that definitely we have to make the town with the people, because they don't understand now how we do the town. You know, I'm now a mayor, and always we are in discussion with inhabitants. They say, but why do you have take this decision? Why do you design this public area like that? And they want more time to create the town together. I think it's very important, because if we don't take care about that, at the end, people can say that the town finally is not for us, and they want to leave the town. And it's a big problem in France at the moment, because we have a lot of discussion about do we need to build more housing in the town, or more social housing in the town? And a lot of people say, stop to build some housing, because there is too many houses in our town. But we need more house. So we need to find a way to how we can accept more housing and more dwelling. I think that the only solution is to build the town together, because we need housing, but we need also that people continue to like to live in the town and to live together in the town.
Yeah, I think this is really recognizable. I recognize this from Amsterdam as well, and I think also the other cities also recognize this, that you need to do this together, along with the citizens of the city, to create really a common understanding of what is needed, and then also that it's also needed to build more social housing in cities.
Pepin, let me just one example, because it's a project supported by Europe. When we create L'Autre Soir, the project Home Silk Road, the name is a project for urban innovative action. Finally, you know, we bought the land 5 years ago, and for the moment there is nothing on the land. You know, only project, only culture, only discussion about what we want to have here. And for the next 5 years, we are going to build. We are going to build some housing for very, very poor people, for homeless. We are going to build some culture place with a concert hall and something like that. But we take the time, you know, because I think that we need the time. And it's very precious that Europe can allow us to drive this sort of project. Gave us 5 million euros immediately, you know, like the 20 over urban innovative project support in 2018. And I think we need that. We need some time to build the town. Sorry, but it's important for me.
Yeah, I think this is really clear. I think this is also, we don't need to talk about this then anymore, but this is then, I think, also what you would ask from the initiative to also include the citizens, take the time, and choose for a holistic approach, and focus on creativity, and not just architects, but actually creativity anywhere. Yeah, great, thanks a lot. Yeah, we need to move to the other city, to the next city already. I saw Bent joining us, Mr. Madsen, I should say, Bent Madsen. I don't know whether he's now in the call. Yeah, he's. Oh, now I see Sorka. Who's?
I think that there is some. I think there must be some issues. So I think we will try to get him back on.
Okay, then we move to first to Helsinki. Then I need to switch my my paperwork, or let's say shift my paperwork a little. Yeah, the festival next year will be in Helsinki, the International Social Housing Festival. Joining us is Mrs. Sanna Vestikansa, who is Deputy Mayor of Helsinki. Very nice that you are joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, great. I also read on the website that you are also responsible for healthcare in your city. So let me just start by asking you a very simple question. I think you also have dealt with the COVID crisis then in your city. So in one word, how was your year last year?
In one word, I would say never seen before, if that is a one word in English. I think it hit us like it hit the whole world, in a sense that we were, of course, we were prepared for some kind of a pandemic, but not like this. So the whole city organization, like you said, we are in charge of all primary healthcare, also actually all healthcare for our citizens and all social care. So we were pushed to change our, of course, our organization and a lot of our action only to deal with the pandemic. So I will take one example. We had 7 persons working in our epidemic department, responsible for tracing, for instance, the epidemia. And when COVID was hit last winter, that we had the most cases. Then there was 400 persons working in that department, and of course thousands who were called every day and checked if they were okay. So a lot of changes in the whole organization, how we had to work. But I'm sure this is common for all of us.
Yeah, but it's. I also saw that the vaccination program was already proceeding. So let's say you're doing the right things right now. I could read from the website.
Yeah, we are focusing a lot on that, and I hope we will, after the summer, like the whole Europe, we can start the new beginning. Of course, then a bit worried how things will go in the rest of the world, because pandemia is not one before we haven't won it in the whole world. So focusing on that next, I think.
Hey, and I expect that the effect of the corona crisis will last longer than just from 7 to 400 people working on it. So can you describe what do you affect? What is the long-term effect of corona pandemic on Helsinki?
Well, first of all, the service sector was hit. I guess Barcelona and all the other cities as well. So hard. So of course we have a lot of people, especially young people, also more women than men who have lost their jobs. So I think the long-term effect is something we need to definitely work a lot and focus a lot in the coming years. Then I'll take also an example on the social front. So I think especially the young people, also the elderly who were social distancing. So the loneliness, the mental health, also the consequences of not moving physically so much. That has a lot of effect that the cities need to focus in the coming months. So first we will have a city council meeting tonight, and we are making a decision how we are going to more focus and more also give funds for the schools, for psychologists and different professionals who work with the young people. So a lot of that. But then of course thinking of the housing, I think also interesting. And we don't know yet how long-term effect it will have. But although the service sector and the small shops in the city center were very much hit of nobody visiting them, we could keep them open in Finland. We had a little bit different situation than in many cities in the South and Central Europe. But people, of course, didn't come and visit, and tourists were gone. But then thinking of the housing, for instance, the garden shops or the hardware shops, they were doing very well. So people were very much focusing on their own apartments, on gardening and things like that. And what kind of effects and what kind of expectations and change of expectations in thinking of the housing markets this will have in a long term. That's I think very interesting, because then of course we need to also adapt what kind of a housing and city planning we are planning in Helsinki in the coming years.
Yeah, but think like what Mrs. Martin mentioned, like suspension of evictions and maybe a moratorium on the collection of rent or things like that. Do you know any of was that needed in Helsinki, or?
I think in a sense we were lucky that we have a very strong social security system. The Nordic welfare state, I think it was also tested and it was proven to be very strong.
Yeah.
So we were able to make also changes that we could adopt very fast in that. For instance, we didn't see evictions rising. We could also focus more on the housing counseling, things like that. So I think that was at least one positive test for our system. And of course, we are studying and seeing what kind of changes we need to do in the future. But I think that at least was something positive coming out of this.
Yeah.
Hopefully also useful for other cities, other countries to learn.
I hope so too. Hey, let's move to the next International Social Housing Festival. So this will next year, 2022, it will take place in Helsinki. And there is already a website, www.socialhousingfestival.eu. And if you go to that website, I went there. I read that one of the main themes of the festival is about affordable sustainability. And it stated that how can we organize an energy transition without leaving anyone behind, avoiding energy poverty? Can you maybe tell why this is an important topic?
Well, it is a very important topic, and I'm happy that it's also in the European Green Deal that we talk about also the fairness and the social consequences. We all know that we need to cut the emissions, we need to really fight against the climate change, but how to do it in the fair way and that it doesn't create new inequalities. I think that is very core. Also connected to our colleague from France, that how people are feel that they are heard and also that they feel that this is the right way to go forward. I think what we have, for instance, done is that we try to, of course, create a lot of information showing that that we are doing it with a lot of scientific experimental knowledge. For instance, testing that we have wooden house in new areas. We have built wooden houses and then concrete houses, and then showing what kind of effects it will have on the emissions. And then, of course, trying to also at the same time have social security housing policies that the costs are not coming to the people, that we as a society try to also make that balance and a good social policy at the same time. But very important things in Helsinki. We have a very ambitious climate targets that 2035 we are carbon neutral city. But since heating of the housing is so important for us, since we have the winters, so this is something we are focusing a lot. And of course, you're all warmly welcome to Helsinki to come and learn what we have done and what we have tried to experiment and focus on this issue.
Yeah, this sounds really exciting. So we're definitely gonna come and see what is going on. I also understand that indeed in Helsinki to become carbon neutral, you really have a big effort to make. And I also understand that it's important to not create new inequalities. Yeah, and I also see that there's a big link with the new European Bauhaus, right? So it's almost as if you are describing how the new European Bauhaus should be. Is that right? And maybe I should ask them, is there anything that this new initiative can help you in achieving your goal?
I think it will help us, well, first of all, to share our experiences and really learn from each other, because this is our common problem, and really we need to. This is a good platform also to design to help us to find new solutions, and climate change also is like coming out of the pandemic. It's a common problem we need to solve also together. So definitely we believe that this is important. But I think also working closely with different actors. That's what we have done, for instance, with our when we have and we are still very committed in Helsinki and Finland to eradicate homelessness, and we have a very strong policy also to on that, and also focusing that in Helsinki next year. So we welcome also to visit that. But I think there also we have seen that the one reason why we have succeeded in reduction of the homelessness is that we have had all the actors, so private sector, non-governmental sector, and cities, state, very many different actors together trying to solve common problems. So I think this European Bauhaus is also very important in that sense.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Stay a little longer with us, please, because maybe there will be some questions at the end, and maybe we'll also ask you to react on each other. First, I would like to check once more whether Mr. Madsen is already in. I see a new.
Hi, Pepe. No, I'm afraid, Bent, there's some technical issues. It's the first time it's happened to him in 1.5 years, so luck is not on his side. He's still trying, but
okay. But then we just move on, and then maybe Mr. Madsen can join the festival in a later panel. Maybe if he manages to turn on his microphone and camera, or solve his technical problems, he can just jump in any moment before 12:10. So let's then move to the panel and ask. And let's first. I would like to ask whether you might want to react on each other. So, and because we are in a kind of a Zoom meeting, I know that I should organize this properly, otherwise everyone starts talking at the same time. So I would like to go to the first speaker, Mrs. Martin. Having heard what is happening in Villeurbanne and in Helsinki, I'm curious. What would be your takeaways?
No, it was interesting for me to hear talking about mental health and how the physical effects on people and how we need to rethink our cities, no, after COVID. And on the chat, someone was saying the dream for a house with garden. No? Maybe COVID has enhanced this, and how we react here in Barcelona. We don't have a lot of space. We have the sea, the mountain. We are a very compact city. So what we are doing is gaining some spaces, some public spaces for people, for working. That's what we needed in these days that we were closed, and when we started to go again to the streets, we need more public space because we need to maintain the social distance. So we start this program called, maybe you know it, it's kind of a name, Super Blocks, in order to gain this public space and keeping it for people to walk and getting out some cars and private, basically cars. So this is what we are working, this Super Blocks program, and also another interesting program that has started right after COVID is this schools protection. That means that where there is a school, all around the school, it needs to be for people, for children to play, and with much less cars and what we were saying, not big gardens, because we don't have these gardens for private houses, but gaining green spaces and space to walk, and that is a big goal and a big project for our local government too.
Yeah. So you're pointing that Corona crisis has also encouraged people to think about health in general, and also now accelerating these projects like Superblock, making them car-free, and creating things like schools protection. Yeah, interesting. And let's move to Cédric. van Stevendal. If you listen to the other speakers from Barcelona and Helsinki, is there anything that that strikes you, that you learned from the other cities?
Yes, I think that, of course, maybe we don't have the same impact of the COVID crisis in the different country, but in fact, there is the same effect. We want more housing, we want more quality of housing, and we want to finally find a solution to build more housing and to propose to the society that housing was one of our priority. And there is a link, really, there is a link between the possibility that we have as political responsible to find a way to put in place our political project at this moment, because 5 years ago, when you talk in my city that you are going to try to end homelessness, for example, as Helsinki is here, it was impossible. And now when you said we need to end homelessness because, as you can see, during the lockdown, people in the street, you must find a solution. Maybe something like in Helsinki, when the weather is very cold, finally, you must find a solution. It's an obligation for it. And now it's an evidence in Lyon. All the stakeholders, all the political stakeholders, from the left wing, sorry, but for the moment, but probably they will come to decide that we are going in Lyon to end homelessness in 10 years. And there is a political agreement on that topic. And in the same time, we decide to regulate the cost of the rent, you know. And at the same time, we decided to build 6,000 social housing by year when we built before 4,000. So I think there is a very similarity between the different towns around the question of housing, and it's a way to finally go further in this political, and the moment is good. I said just before the end of my mandate that we're in the money time. Do you remember, Sorka? And now we are not in the money time, we are in action time, because I think there is a big opportunity to deal with the situation and push our proposition in favor of more social and more affordable housing in different town or country.
Yeah, this is great to hear. This is a kind of similar to what happens in Barcelona, right? That it became more clear that some of the basics of housing rights are important. Yeah, and we should take this momentum also politically. Yeah, this is a great addition. Hey, I see Mr. Bent Madsen now also in my screen. Hopefully the camera is working as well, or let's say the microphone is working as well. Yeah. You only need to turn on your microphone, and then we can hear you. Let's see if this works out.
Yes, hello everybody.
Great.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It's during 1.5 years. I have tried, I think, 1,000 Zoom meetings, but this is definitely the most difficult one. And good to see you. And I tried to say hi to you, Cedric, before, but then I was turned off and ended out in cyberspace. And thank you to everybody for being here today.
Hey, we should go straight to...
Try to stay a minute or two, if Zoom wants.
Yeah. Well, let's start straight away. So my question to you would be how, what do you see in cities across Europe happening in COVID crisis?
Oh, many things is happening also in my home country, Denmark. I think when we look at it, there has been many different things all over Europe. But what we have seen in many respects is the inequalities as we know them, as we knew the inequalities before, but they have been much clearer now. And when we look at the pandemic, something we maybe knew, but also have become clearer now. And that's similar for different countries. We have seen this similar pattern. The civil society has been much stronger and much more resilient. And I think that's a positive thing, which we have to preserve and we have to build on from now on, and see what the housing areas can do. And when we look at the housing areas, the function of the housing areas has been much more active when we have seen the pandemic, and also many of the more deprived housing areas with many immigrants, and we have seen the pandemic spreading in these housing areas. We have a similar pattern has been that we have been very fast to work together with the authorities and create testing facilities. And right now we see examples where we also are creating facilities for the vaccination, because the information in the society has been what you can call a mid-class information to the society, and we have to disseminate the information in another way, often person by person, and it has worked in many places. And this taking depart from the local housing area and see how strong it is. And also when we look at education and working and what we have seen in the pandemic, it is also that the working place and where we live has merged for many people together. And in many European countries, we have relatively small apartments. And I think we had to create new working spaces in the local area. And it gives opportunities too, because
I think there are technical problems again. It's a pity.
We have people.
This is a pity because this.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we could not hear you the last few minutes. You were just talking about the holistic.
Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. You said minutes. Okay, so you're very patient. I'm very sorry, but we have. My point is, because this, if we create new kind of housing areas with workspace in the housing areas, it's also an opportunity. Many people come closer to a workplace, and we have to use this local hubs also to bring people nearer to the labor market. When we look at all the European countries and we have the structural unemployment, actually part of the struggle is from people living in the more deprived areas, and it's very hard to bring people closer to the labor market. And now we have a better opportunity if we are wise to use what we have learned during the COVID crisis.
Yeah. So if I understood it correctly, but we prepared this before, so I knew kind of what you were telling while we were not hearing you. Is that we need to focus on an integrated approach, right? It's not only housing, but we should also think about how to integrate working areas, commerce, culture in our neighborhoods. And this is also a task for housing providers to think about this.
Yes.
And And if we think about this new European Bauhaus initiative, if you relate this to this initiative by the EU Commission, so what do you think? What do we need if we want to improve neighborhoods in this manner?
Yes, I think it has great perspectives when you look at it, and the keywords beautiful and inclusive and sustainable, and we have to put some content in it. That's the task right now, to put something more concrete in it. So it's as I see it, it's a great ambition for the cities throughout Europe, and now we have to transform the strong words and the ambitions into concrete action. And the concrete actions in my perspective is that what we need is to bring people nearer to have better education and bring them nearer to the labor market, and use what we have learned about the closer connection between what is going on in the housing areas and what is going on in the authorities, and bring the authorities nearer and out, and bring the welfare society closer to the housing areas to become more effective, which it isn't today, but maybe there is here an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot for your contribution, Mr. Matt. Great to have you still at the very end in this panel. So yeah, we need to come to a conclusion because the time is running out almost. We have 8 minutes left. So yeah, but what have we learned from this this panel? Of course, I ask all of you to reply on how this new European Bauhaus, to indicate how this can help cities. So, well, from Mrs. Martin, we heard that yeah, the stock, social housing stock, is still growing in Barcelona, regardless of the COVID pandemic. And we also heard from her that some of the things that were already being advocated that started to actually happen. For instance, the suspension of evictions and the reduced rents and the homeless shelters that were set up, which is really nice. And referring to this new Bauhaus initiative, there should really be focus on scaling up the things that are already going on. For instance, providing public land and this circular approach to housing, to building housing, and also to improve subsidize and financing schemes on sustainability, and also combining that with improving the vulnerable neighborhoods. Yeah, this is a very clear answer to the question. Then we move to Villerbaan, to Mr. van Stievendaal. He focused on the holistic approach that was needed, so that we involve all the citizens of the city, and also talk and take time to talk, even 5 years, to come to a common understanding of what is needed. And this collective story can also be improved by adding cultural actors to the projects. He also focused on that we need a lot of creativity, not just the ones that we expect creativity from, but also the policymakers and so on. The speaker from Helsinki, Mrs. Vestikansa, she really indicated how big the effort is that we need to take to become more sustainable, and also that there's an important danger, that it will also improve inequality. So we should really focus on that, how to make the city the fairness of becoming more sustainability, how to do that in a fair way. And this is something that we as housing providers, we should also focus on, I think. And also advocate that this should be done. And finally, Mr. Madsen told us about that we don't need to, as housing providers, not just think about the housing stock itself, but also think about how to integrate working, commerce, culture. So to really integrate different functions of the city, and also hand out to those other actors in the city, and try to come up with a collective plan. And he also told us that it's not just housing providers, but we should really work together with the authorities. And I think one of the most interesting things was the effect of COVID crisis, that some of the things that we are advocating for a very long time, this is maybe the momentum. This is the moment to also show how important the things are that we already have been talking about for a very long time, like the homeless shelters, like the suspension of evictions, or just not having any evictions, and also like rent control, also of the public market. We should spread our message. I think this is also one of the takeaways of this panel. So thanks a lot to all speakers. Very nice that you were all in this panel. We'll now head up to the new festival, which will be then in 2022, in Helsinki. And of course, this is again putting forward the challenges that the cities face, and also about how social housing can be a solution for that. And this is, of course, after COVID, an even more relevant question to ask. So yeah, now the next thing that we're going to do is in a minute that we will watch a short clip that give people a taste of what is going on next year in Helsinki. So the organization prepared a kind of preview for us. Thanks for all the speakers to join us. Thanks for the audience to watch us. And also after the clip of Helsinki, we will have a next panel, which is BBC Storyworks, who is also involved in that, and several housing associations from Finland, Norway, and Ireland. They have featured their work in building communities in a series of movies, which also partly, or let's say, clips will be shown at this festival as well. And those will be launched in a bit. So I hope you will enjoy. And I would like to give the word, if needed, to Sorka.
Only to say thank you, Pepijn, for bringing your knowledge, experience, and energy to this session. I think you've managed to bring out, for me, 2 clear messages. This is action time, and it truly is. I think it cannot be clearer that now is when we need to reframe housing with our housing system with social justice at the center. And in terms of the new European Bauhaus, to fill it indeed with content. And I think this panel today has shown just how much content we can bring to that, and also the previous one. So thank you so much, Pepijn, for bringing out those clear messages. And we're going to, as you say, move on to the clip, and then a session looking a little bit behind the scenes at the movies that we're going to be showing. Thanks a lot to everybody for being there.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, and I will look at the recording. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ben.
ARA, the Housing Finance and Development Centre of Finland, has a major responsibility for the implementation of Finnish housing policy. ARA provides government grants, subsidies and guarantees related to housing and construction of housing. Together with the City of Helsinki, we welcome you to the International Social Housing Festival 2022 in Helsinki. At the festival, we explore the role of social, public and cooperative housing in achieving socially and ecologically sustainable living. The festival themes are 1. People first, quality of housing as quality of living. 2. Achieving affordability and sustainability in housing. And 3. The right to housing, getting rid of the excuses not to guarantee it.
Se perhe, joka asuu siinä kodissa, ja sitten myöskin se naapurusto, ne ihmiset, jotka asuu siinä ympärillä, siinä yhteisössä. Se tekee sen kodin.
We see the quality of housing as a fundamental prerequisite for a good quality of living. In Finland, public, cooperative and social housing providers have been committed to this mission for decades. Cornerstones of our physical, mental and social well-being.
Mulle kodissa on tärkeintä se, että se näyttää omalta ja että siellä on kiva sellainen sisustus, mikä on meidän näköinen. Ja sitten tietenkin se perhe on ykkösjuttu, että siellä on ne rakkaat ihmiset ja koirat.
Transition towards
mikä on meidän näköinen.
ARA, social housing provider. ARA, the Housing, Finance and Development Centre of Finland, has a major responsibility for the implementation
Helsingin asuntopolitiikka tehdään kaikille ja Helsingin asuntopolitiikka haluaa palvella monipuolisesti myös täällä jo asuvia ihmisiä. Tällä hetkellä me rakennetaan Helsingissä useita isoja uusia asuinalueita ja näitä kaikkia uusia alueita me rakennetaan sellaisilla periaatteilla, että sinne tulee niin kovan rahan omistusasuntoja kuin sitten säädeltyä asumista ja kaupungin omaa sosiaalista asuntotuotantoa, säädeltyä vuokra-asuntotuotantoa.
The public sector has a crucial role providing the right to housing for everyone. Finland is a leading example in abolishing homelessness, but also in addressing the exclusion of the most vulnerable groups of the housing market, as well as promoting socially balanced neighbourhoods.
Riippumatta siitä, että onko pienituloinen tai suurituloinen, niin me halutaan, että on mahdollista asua Helsingissä. Et kyllä se on sellainen asia, mistä voi musta Helsingissä olla ylpeä ja jota mielellään myös sitten näytän tänne tuleville vieraille.
More than ever, we must come together to discuss how to solve the acute and the future housing challenges, and how to assist the birth of new solutions, also by promoting active citizenship and resident participation. For more information, visit socialhousingfestival.eu.
Hello.
Hello to everyone. So I see our speakers are live, so they're just going to turn on their cameras. Yes, so we have Mark, we have Kate, and I saw that also Johanna was there. And yeah, Christian is also in. And Johanna, I see that you're there, so if you could just switch on your microphone and your camera from the black column, as we call it, on the left, and then we'll be able to see you and to hear you. Perfect. Hello.
Great. So now we kick off our next session to focus in a little bit on the movie and the movie festival that we'll be running over the next couple of days. And really happy to have you all here. So I'm Sorka Edwards, Secretary General of Housing Europe, and my colleague.
Yes, and my name is Diana Erdenova, and I'm the Communications Director of Housing Europe. Very nice to have you with us.
And just a quick introduction to our panelists today. Very happy to have you here with us and to get your perspective on the movies that we're going to be showing. So we have Mark Gaver, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Hi, Mark.
Yeah.
Partner manager at the program partnerships from BBC Global News. So really happy to have you here today. Also, Dr. Joanna Lilius is here with us. Nice to meet you. You're going to be telling us a little bit about your postdoctoral research, the work you're doing there in the Department of Architecture, and particularly getting feedback from residents, which I think if you followed at all the last two panels is really at the heart of what's been coming out when we talk about the new European Bauhaus, this not developing the cities without the people who are actually going to be living there. And we also have Kate Morgan. Hi, Kate.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, you're the marketing officer from Cooperative Housing Ireland, so one of the Irish members of Housing Europe, and you're going to be able to give us a little bit behind the scenes story of one of the excellent films that has shown on how you work together, providing a home for people who've been dislocated by war. And so there I hand over the floor to Diana to tell us a little bit more about the building communities and the main message we want to get to with that hashtag.
Yes, so yeah, before I go to Mark, because he has been really working on that a lot, but it's been now over a year, and in the beginning when the idea of having this series started, we all didn't know where would that lead us to, and there we are now. Building communities is a reality. It's going to be launched today at 2:00, and the more we were seeing what kind of stories are going to be covered, so it really goes from sustainable housing to refugee integration, to community building, to using sustainable materials, taking care of different parts of the society, different geographies. At some point, we actually were here in the office and we were saying, isn't actually that the new European Bauhaus? Isn't really that we are aiming at, building communities, all the while staying, having affordable housing and also sustainable housing. But I'm very interested in, and then I cannot speak for the BBC and for Mark, so I'll ask him directly, how come that you are firstly interested in public, cooperative and social housing? And yes, if you could also maybe explain a little bit more about the series, what they're about, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, thank you, Diana. You've done a fantastic job in putting this all together. Really enjoying the platform so far, and actually, frankly, honoured to sit on this panel alongside some housing experts. I certainly am not an expert in housing, but firstly, I think it's important to touch upon why we chose to pursue this particular topic of affordable and social housing. And really, it all starts with bbc.com, where the series is being hosted. And as of 2 p.m, you can go and watch some of the films already. I know the hyperlink will be floating around the event, but that website has roughly 160 million unique browsers monthly. And when we're in the early stages of series development and dealing with these large numbers, it's important for us to constantly ask the question, who are these people? And actually, what do they really care about? And so we conduct surveys and research into our audiences on bbc.com. And over the last couple of years, what we found is that stories related to social equality and sustainability actually tend to get the highest engagement with our audiences, which is very encouraging, but also in the context of a broader agenda. We know our viewers across Europe and indeed across the world really care about these issues. I think the pandemic certainly brought all of our dwellings into sharper focus, but even prior to that, there was clearly what some would call a housing crisis across Europe, and a real need for this sector to focus more than ever on really delivering quality, affordable and sustainable housing for all. Large-scale initiatives such as the renovation wave, but also indeed the critical and vital work and ideas exchange Housing Europe and housing federations across Europe are engaged in, really do harbour the potential for far-reaching environmental, social and economic rejuvenation in the housing sector. However, I think it became very clear to us in our early research that a number of challenges and misconceptions still persist. And so really the idea from our perspective is that by showing the benefits of forward-thinking, social and affordable housing initiatives right the way across Europe, we hope that building communities will sort of bridge that understanding for the general public and subsequently act as a catalyst for a meaningful housing recovery and really critically transform people's lives for the better. Now, how we do this is through telling stories. We are all by nature hardwired to absorb stories, particularly those that convey emotions. And so throughout our series development, we were really looking for character-driven stories that featured citizens at the center of these communities, shining a new light on their lives. And I think that is the best way of shattering some of those misconceptions that persist around affordable housing. Thematically, as you've already addressed, Diana, we're addressing sustainable renovations, migration, tenant democracy, smart cities and digital communities, affordability, gender equality, how families can access affordable, spacious dwellings in city centres, and much more. But critically, at the centre of each and every one of those films, we have those strong characters that truly exemplify the spirit of the story we're trying to tell. Hopefully during the course of this panel, I'll get to go in a little bit more detail as to some of those stories. But look, it's been a really collaborative project. And so I think I'm going to hand over and let some of the panelists who have joined us on this journey talk about their individual films.
Thanks a lot, Mark. And indeed, your expertise is storytelling. So now we're going to hear a little bit from an organization which wouldn't get very far if it was only storytelling. So those organizations that are really delivering affordable housing on the ground and maintaining and renovating those homes. We're going to turn to Christian. Sorry, I didn't introduce you at the beginning, Christian. So you're Christian Frederick Mathisen, Director of Innovation and Competence at the NBBL. So that's the National Federation in Norway that represents and brings together the different cooperative housing providers. And indeed, the very first film we're going to be showing this afternoon, hopefully we'll get over the technical glitches. The first film that we're going to be showing is the one which is going to tell a little bit the story coming from Norway. And there will be also a focus on the big question of the decarbonization of the stock, which is also very high on the agenda here, obviously in Brussels and globally. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the film is going to touch upon.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me. I hope everything's all right. So it's been awesome to tune in and listening to your very, very interesting talks. The movie that we have been talking about right now is a movie that's been filmed in the north of Norway. And it shows the global unique housing model of Norway, where 80% own their own homes. We have a co-ownership and cooperative housing model, which makes it possible for ordinary people to own their own homes. This model is based on a democratic foundation that gives every homeowner within that cooperative housing company the same saying, independent of their background. And the model is so successful that one-fourth of all the homes in Norway are now organized in this manner. Now, as I said, the picture is filmed in Narvik, and it shows our great member OMT showing a case where they turn an energy consumer to an energy prosumer. And in this process, turns this home while the residents are living within this block of flats to a home that uses 75% less energy from the energy grid. Now, this is a staggering number, 75% of their energy consumption. And this is done while the residents live there. So truly remarkable. And the great thing is that it's not a unique story. OMT has, together with several of our members, created a sustainability standard that gives homeowners a unique tool to collaborate with boards and the cooperative housing associations to push forward reaching the targets of the Paris Agreement. Now, our co-ownership model shown in the film decreases the cost of renovation for each family, thus making it possible to do sustainable renovation. Renovation that increases the triple bottom line of the performance of the house, increases the people, the planet, and the profit performance. So it's truly great to be able to show this movie to you. Our cooperative and co-ownership model has in turn been a vital contribution that has given Norway one of the best maintained housing masses in the world. Our infrastructure includes several of the pillars on which we have built our nation's prosperity and equality standards. So it's something that is truly great to be able to speak about. This could never have been possible without our cooperative housing associations. We do not pay dividends. All our profit is pushed back into the organizations in order to provide better homes for our members. Now, tomorrow, the Cooperative Housing Federation in Norway will celebrate its 75th anniversary. And therefore, we believe it's okay and safe to say and conclude that we have established a model that is truly sustainable, and it should be used as an inspiration to build a better and more inclusive housing market that could benefit, where everybody can benefit from owning their own home.
Thanks a lot, Christian. I think that gives us a little bit of an insight. It comes indeed, you mentioned the fact that the oil profit gains to generate are really reinvested back into the housing and the housing estates themselves. And I think this is a crucial point, and it's this nature indeed of the housing sector globally we can see is more about extraction. So we have a lot of short-term profit extraction, whether that's from the rental sector or the home ownership sector. So I think globally, as cities and countries really look to solutions to the housing crisis, I think this is going to be one of the key features. So how to keep reinvesting finance into providing more homes. So that gives us a nice taster of what's coming up. I just want to jump now, in fact, to my own home country. Indeed, we're going to hear from Kate. It's quite a really, Diana and Mark, you mentioned the huge diversity of the different topics that came up as we were, as these short films were being prepared over the last months. And indeed, Kate is going to look at quite a different topic, and the experience that Cooperative Housing Ireland has had with the refugee resettlement project, finding families for homes who've been finding homes for families who've been really uprooted as a result of wars in the Middle East. So Kate, maybe you could give us a little bit of an insight into that.
Yeah, thanks, Erica. It's wonderful to be part of today. And I'd like to say thank you as well to the BBC Storyworks for helping us to tell these stories. I think they are very important. And I do agree with Mark that, stories are fundamentally the way that everybody understands the world. Even if we've had a very different experience from other people, we can still relate human to human. So I think that's what's really special about these stories and how people are really placed at the centre. Just to give some background on the resettlement programme here in Ireland. In 1998, we were one of the first 6 countries in Europe to establish a resettlement programme for refugees. And as part of this particular project, Ireland pledged to house 4,000 people who had been displaced. But I think really this is a story of a family's resilience and what can be done when organisations come together in response to a crisis. It's about Mustafa Babali, his wife Muna, their son Mohammed, and their daughter Maram. And their story begins in Aleppo in Syria, where they ran an international taxi service and a ladies' wear shop. They had a beautiful home, an apartment that Muna had decorated using her design skills, having studied design in Aleppo. And I was lucky enough when I met the family as part of this project to see some photographs of that home and the life that they had there. But overnight, with the outbreak of war, everything changed and their family lost everything. I think we often talk about housing in terms of delivery, in terms of pipeline, in terms of targets. And in that conversation, we can sometimes forget that housing is fundamentally about people and every person has a right to have a home. When they lost their home, they travelled extensively throughout Syria, staying with extended family until the war found them everywhere they went. They then settled for a short period of time in Turkey. and then in Lebanon with Mustafa's sister and her family. Mohammed and Maram attended school there, learning everything through an unfamiliar language, and their father, Mustafa, worked long hours to provide for their family. And it was there that Mustafa and his wife decided to apply through the UN refugee program, not knowing that it was going to be Ireland that would answer their call. I think this is also a story about cooperation and what cooperations can do at all levels, from international to local, from the Irish government's pledge to house 4,000 people, all the way down to our local authorities here, or municipalities, who worked with CHI to house Mustafa and his family against the backdrop of a housing crisis here in Ireland in and of itself. We became part of that process because of our expertise in housing in Ireland, having provided 6,500 homes here since 1973. And we worked with the municipalities and the Irish Red Cross to house people. But in the case of Mustafa's family, we worked with Wexford County Council, which is a county in the southeast of Ireland, beautiful part of the world, for those of you who are not familiar with it. And the council approached us here to find suitable housing. When Mustafa's family first arrived in Dublin, they were placed in temporary accommodation here in Ireland, in Dungarvan in County Waterford, where they undertook language courses and had the support of local NGOs to integrate into Irish life. And during that time, we worked with Wexford County Council to find suitable housing for them in Enniscorthy, and they were eventually housed in CHI homes here. Our housing officer, Maria Butler, would have helped them through that transition, speaking to them about their experience and also ensuring that they knew everything they needed to know about living in a CHI home. When I first met Mustafa and Muna, they described receiving the keys of their home for the first time. And Mustafa said it was like taking the last steps of a 6-year journey home. It's wonderful, I think, as an organization to have been able to work with them and to tell their story, but also to hear from them about their experiences, good and bad. Now Mustafa is working in a restaurant in Gorey. He completed a business course since he's arrived here. His son Mohammed has just finished his leaving cert, which is the final exam you do here before you attend university. Their daughter Maram has just done her junior cert, which is the exam that you do when you're 15 and 16 in Ireland. They've worked really hard to make the house that CHI have provided a home, and it's filled with beautiful designs from Muna. And I think it's easy to see from watching the film that having a secure home really is the first stepping stone to everything else in life and many other things. So I'm just delighted to be part of this experience and to share these stories. And I'd like to thank as well BPC Storyworks again for their support in telling these stories and for their holistic approach to people's experiences and how we can all learn from sharing each other's stories. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. Indeed, it's the film. It will be screened tomorrow, and it's called "Finding a Home After Losing Everything." And you said it's a short movie. It's a bit less than 5 minutes, but really, it's all that it's about, and it's beautifully shot as well. The story of Mustafa. But well, as we have already mentioned a few times, so there will be 5 films that will be screened during the Social Housing Film Festival. But there are actually quite a few that are in preparation. Some are just filmed, being edited, or will be filmed further on. And one of that is a film about a story in Finland. And there I'm turning to Johanna because she is not working in a housing association as Christian and as Kate, but still is kind of indirectly part of that story because as a researcher, her and her colleagues have been interviewing tenants who already live in a new social rental housing in Helsinki. And they have been asking people living there questions about how do they feel, how is all that going? And based on all of the results that they have accumulated, then there is a new housing that has been built together with architects and with tenants and with researchers. And this is what one of the films will be about this co-decision making. So I'm going to ask Johanna to explain a little bit about this research. And although the film is not ready yet, what can we expect a little bit based on the studies that you have been doing?
Yes, thank you. And I must also say that also for a researcher, it's nice to watch stories about housing, although we look at housing often from another perspective, but of course also from the stories that we hear during interviews, for example. As a short background, maybe I would like to explain that in Helsinki, in Finland, the city actually has a project called Developing Housing Block. And this is a project that tries to encourage developers to find and develop some kind of new solutions in apartment buildings, because Finland is a country where people often prefer single family housing. So there is kind of a need to make also apartment house buildings more attractive to residents. And if the developers use some funding for research or for developing something, then the city gives them a good plot in a desirable location. So there's a real incentive also for developers to try to get into this program. And the episode is about a development for urban families. This is a target group set actually by the city of Helsinki in the Development Housing Block project. And this particular house is developed by A-Kruunu, and A-Kruunu is a state-owned company that develops social rental housing in the Helsinki metropolitan area. And for this particular development, then we were particularly interested in what housing for contemporary urban families could be like. So for the research part, we looked for benchmark examples in Northern Europe, and we were particularly interested in understanding the family practices in the apartments in new social housing in Helsinki, because there is actually very little knowledge on how residents use their homes, what works and what does not. And the knowledge that we actually have is mostly from the 1940s and the 1950s, when these issues were studied really in detail, and also then this knowledge was actually used in the very often social rental housing that was developed in many, many countries in Europe. And we found out that families in social rental housing in Helsinki particularly appreciate the spacious new flats. And this is quite understandable because many of them had moved from private rental housing. So in social rental housing, they actually could have one more room at the same cost. Because in social rental housing, the housing is based on the costs only. But they also appreciated many new features that you can find in new housing in Helsinki, such as those large bathrooms, flexible rooms such as alcoves, and also the many different communal spaces that you can find in social rental housing in Helsinki. Rooms where you can meet your neighbors, but also saunas, and most importantly for families, for example, spaces for strollers. However, it was clear that many of the families lacked still storage spaces. And the episode, as far as I understand, will be about this process, about this research, but also then about the solutions that the architects developed for this housing block, including porches connected to the flats, different kind of flexible room solutions. And it will also be about how the families living in this house actually find the housing and how it suits to their needs.
We can't hear you, Sorka. I think that the microphone is on mute.
Sorry, for me, it would be just to wrap up. It would be really nice to hear just maybe one key message, your main takeaway from that you got from working with BBC Works on this project. Already we can, I think the messages coming through from Joanna really resonate with the session from earlier on today, because as you know, we're talking about the new European Bauhaus, and one of the objectives is beauty. And the social housing providers, they all stressed beauty is very subjective, and it has to be about comfort. It has to also be about, in the way they said, affordability. It has to be about suitability, and it has to be about bringing nature into the homes. And I think what what your research is doing is also really getting in tune with people living in the homes and getting their perspective back. And I think it's really has to be at the core of this, the new dynamic that we want to bring in to the new European Bauhaus as well. But let's just wrap up. If you have maybe just a key, the main sort of message you got, or main thought that this experience has left you with making this a short movie. Maybe Kate and then Christian.
Yeah, I think as a kind of a final word or final message, what was so amazing to me was how willing Mustafa and his family were to share their stories and their belief in storytelling, and fundamentally their belief in people still, despite all their experiences, and the great hope that they have that in sharing their experience through this film and this festival and this process, that it will inspire other people and other organizations similar to CHI to see what can be done through cooperation. So I think that's a nice thing to finish on from ourselves.
I think Mustafa willing to play that role of ambassador as well after such a difficult time. I think it really is inspiring and gives us hope. And Christian?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think I'd just like to say that the green renovation wave, it's here. It's not something you have to wait for. Yes, it's hard to make the right decisions. But if you make those right decisions, we have the know-how, we have the technology, we have the laws and regulations, we have the co-own and cooperative infrastructure. You just have to look, knowing where to look. And this is that we have what we need to make this green building transaction possible. And we have the tools that we need to put in place in order to reach the Paris Agreement. But it will be very, very hard to make sure that the decision makers do the right decision and makes the right decisions. From our perspective, it's truly fantastic to go out to Narvik and seeing that there is houses where you have very young people, with families with young people living in the same house as the oldest resident in this cooperative was 103 years old. So it is possible to build great communities, great houses for homeowners, and doing the right decisions that gives people, planet, and profit gains. But you have to know where to look, and you really have to do the right choices. And if you do, you can create great well-being for the people who live in homes.
The main point indeed, the well-being has to be at the core. Joanna, leave us with your final thought.
Yes, I would say involve the residents in the design processes, go from a top-down perspective to a bottom-up perspective, also in social rental housing.
Very clear.
And we mentioned a couple of times, but as we said, the films are starting already at 2 o'clock. So Mark, did we miss something? What can we expect in these 2 days, but also after? What is coming up in September?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website has, of course, launched today. You can watch 5 of the films, and I know that they'll also be showcased over the next couple of days. Between now and September, we'll be releasing a total of 25 films, as well as other content such as articles, which will sit on that bbc.com site for 1 year. And you will have seen today, we have films addressing rehousing refugees in Ireland to renovating homes in Norway. And the remaining 20 films will feature tenant democracy in Denmark, migration, integration, and gender equality in Sweden. We're in France, Italy, Switzerland, Macedonia, Belgium, Germany, Finland, right the way across Europe. And in each and every one of those films, we've got those community leaders. We've got a diverse set of young people, mothers, the elderly, and some of the thought leaders really at the cutting edge of harnessing technology and design to improve people's lives. So I'd encourage you all to check it out, share the films as well, and sort of inspire that discourse. But we're very excited. And again, thank you for inviting us to sit on this panel.
Thanks a lot, Mark. And it's good timing indeed, as the new European Bauhaus is launched, we're going to have these inspiring examples presented in such an appealing way, an accessible way, to really show what beauty, inclusiveness, and sustainability looks when they are combined in a housing project. So that's really excellent timing.
Yeah, and because we couldn't actually play the official trailer in the very beginning, I'd like maybe if you have 2 more minutes just to spend and to watch it, because I think it's really beautifully made. So I'll try to share my screen.
Hopefully it works this time. But
fingers crossed. Yeah.
And thanks to you, Diana, and thanks to you guys for joining in. Let's continue the conversation.